So in this video, I'm going to talk about the value of debt and building wealth and when to use debt and when not to use debt. Before doing that, go over to adamfad.com, especially if you're an expat or a high net wealth individual and are looking for assistance in investing and growing your wealth over periods of time. Now, that kind of leads me to something, and that's that when it comes to debt, historically, people took out debt when they were poor. So if you look at most traditional morality systems, they were pretty much against debt. That wasn't just traditional religion, it was many traditional values, because it was often seen as something whereby poorer people would be indebted to richer people. So it'd be kind of not a very good system for fairness, and that was the way it was historically seen. And indeed, all over society, all over the world, in most countries, debt is still seen in that way. There's still a negative connotation. And I'm not saying it's completely unreasonable. Charlie Munger, who recently died, who was Warren Buffett's right-hand man, once said that smart people could only get broke with the three L's: liquor, ladies, and leverage. And Warren Buffett laughed and he said, I think he only used the two L's at the beginning because he needed to use them. I think really only leverage causes very smart people to go broke. So it is true that debt or leverage should be used very, very carefully. If you use it wrong, you can get in very serious trouble. For example, if you take out loads of mortgages and if the interest rate goes up just a little bit, you're going to be broke. That's a very, very bad decision, right? Because you're giving yourself no freedom from movement. You're not giving yourself any kind of degree of safety. So in addition to that, there are certain debts which are almost always bad. For example, credit card debts. If it's charging you 18%, 20% per year, you're never going to make that, at least long term, on a legitimate, safe investment, which isn't based on speculation. However, there are many times and many cases where debt can make sense. First of all, let's look at the maths to begin with. Let's say if you're going to buy a property, and you buy the property, if you're lucky enough to have cash, you buy it in cash at $200,000, somewhere in the world, right? And then it goes up to $400,000, so you've doubled your money. That's not bad, but obviously if it's doubled in, say, 20 years, the compounded rate is not that good, right? In comparison, let's say you put down only $20,000. You find a tenant to pay your mortgage, and now it's worth $400,000. You've made a much higher amount. You've made like 20 times, based on your original investment. Now, property is a good example of when leverage can work. It's a huge misconception that property has beaten the stock market long term. It actually hasn't. The only way you could even get close to the stock market returns are focusing on a good yield and also leveraging. That's the key to property investment right there. If you can leverage safely, it can be a good investment. But for most people, most of the time, if you don't want to leverage a lot, often the maths don't stack up versus, say, the stock market. Likewise, in business, let's say you're looking at any deal. If you can get debt out at 6 or 7% and you've got a deal where you're pretty secure that you can make 10% per year or more, then it's a no-brainer to take out the debt if it's not going to take too much of your time. So for example, in many industries, whether that's accounting, whether that's finance, investing and whatever, you might have a deal where you've agreed to pay multiples of recurrent income. Let's say it's 3 times. Well, in that case, if you're going to make all your money back in 3 years, obviously there's always risk. It's a no-brainer to take out debt or leverage because ultimately the cost of the loan is less than the investment amount and by a huge margin. So you're giving yourself margin for error. Likewise, if you've already got a mortgage out and it's a fixed rate of 3%, and the stock market historically has done between, say, 6 and 10% per year, depending on the market, assuming you're reinvesting dividends, it usually does not make sense to actually pay off your mortgage early because what are you saving? You're saving 3%. However, what I would say is this: when it comes to financial planning, you've also got to focus on your emotional well-being. there are a certain type of individual who cannot deal with the ups and downs. So for example, I can remember a few years ago, you could get a margin loan, also known as a Lombard loan, often for 1% per year. That was a no-brainer for many people, as long as you didn't get too greedy. However, if you're the kind of individual who would not sleep at night if your account went down by 5 or 10% because you have taken out debt, you're probably not the right person to take out a loan or leverage. So basically, I think before deciding to take out debt, you have to focus on A, does it make sense? The amount you're going to make from the investment has to be much higher than the loan. It can't just be a small amount. And then B, you've got to also make sure that emotionally you can deal with the ups and downs of a leveraged investment. You might take out a loan and then the stock market or the real estate market might crash and it might take a few years to recover. You've got to deal with that risk, which could also affect your mental health as well.